Taiwan's lessons should not be repeated on the mainland. 1. Why did Taiwan become what it is today? 90% of it is not unified. Why anti-China favoring Japan? Even most Taiwanese do not recognize themselves as Chinese. In an ideological war, the flames cannot be seen and the smoke cannot be smelled. But in the end, you will see the consequences. It's just that when you see the consequences, it's often too late. 2. The United States' ideological battle against Taiwan is almost 100 points. And now, I see a similar pattern on the mainland. You must know that multinational companies will try to launch products in Taiwan before entering the mainland market. Because Taiwan is the Chinese market that is most similar to the whole mainland China. 3. Therefore, according to the reaction of the Taiwan market, it is roughly known that the mainland market is not successful. I think it will be a big hit. According to the actual operation in Taiwan, I will correct omissions and improve the model. It will further increase sales. 4. Therefore, the United States wants to attack the Chinese fortress, disintegrate China, and peacefully evolve China. Taiwan experience is too important. The United States has already sorted out its actual combat experience in ideological warfare in Taiwan over the past few decades. A complete Taiwan model was built, also gradually imported to the mainland. 5. The importance of the Taiwan model is because Taiwan has too strong a connection with mainland China in terms of nationality, culture, and politics. Imported to the mainland, not only can copy the Taiwan model. Moreover, after conquering Taiwan, Taiwan's culture, media, education, and economy and trade can be used to deeply, profoundly, and generally affect mainland China. 6. So, let's sort it out carefully and see how the United States has waged ideological wars in Taiwan for a long time. How to evolve Taiwan step by step is very important. Especially, now in the mainland, I see the same operation again and again. Not unserious. 7. When the United States was operating in Taiwan, of course Japan was not idle. The first step is to master the textbook. Starting from elementary school textbooks, we will pull Taiwan out of China step by step. Using localization and localization as an excuse to magnify Taiwan and Taiwanism only. Why do we need to understand the Yellow River and Yangtze River? We should understand Danshui River and Zhoushui River. Say Taiwanese should love Taiwan. As a result, Chinese history, geography, and national consciousness were quickly pulled out of textbooks. 8. Europe and the United States have the right to speak in global academics. Therefore, not only science and engineering, but all social sciences and humanities must use European and American theories and publish papers in European and American journals. So, may I ask, who can submissively obey the right to speak in the United States? 9. Taiwanese media are not capable of international reporting. Therefore, BBC, CNN, Reuters, Agence France Presse, and NHK are sources of international news in Taiwan. What the journalism department studies is also the communication theory established by others. The United States has also vigorously interfered in Taiwan's media. Before the general election in Taiwan, it was hard for everyone to imagine how deep the United States was involved in Taiwan's media. And Night questions fighting power, as Taiwan, is the only program that tells the truth from an independent point of view. Just before the 2020 general election, it was pressured to take it off the shelves. Apart from Night questions on fighting power, Taiwan no longer has any programs based on the Chinese standpoint. 10. Taiwan's network is the home of the United States. Therefore, the ideological war on the internet has made Taiwanese people very clear about what can be said and what cannot be said. What speech will be suppressed and what speech will be encouraged. 11. The United States and Japan will look for candidates in universities, use NGOs and various foundations, and bind young people early. Whether it is applying for schools, scholarships, or publishing papers in the future, you both need to have US connections. Therefore, in all walks of life in Taiwan, you can hardly find people who are not pro-American. Japan is also very wary of any anti-Japanese rhetoric. It will also foster pro-Japanese forces in academia. 12. Japan controls and the United States controls Taiwan's economy, plus a large number of American and Japanese businessmen, as well as communities of interests in Taiwan. The result is that if you are not pro-American and not pro-Japanese, you will be unable to move an inch in all walks of life in Taiwan. If you are close to the United States and Japan, it will be like a godsend. This is especially true in the entertainment and cultural circles. 13. Any voice in Taiwan that is friendly to the mainland will become weaker and weaker. Don't say it's orthodox. Blue also turns light blue and then light green. This is the law. Use Taiwan's public opinion to counterattack the mainland and evolve the mainland. This is the American playbook. The Taiwan issue is an issue between China and the United States. It can even be said to be a problem with Western countries. The resolution of the Taiwan issue means that the West will withdraw from East Asia, and China will become the hegemon in East Asia. Russia's self-protection also benefits from its having an atomic bomb. If Russia does not have an atomic bomb, Putin will be Saddam's end. For example, some countries have given up the US dollar. As long as those countries are still in the Western system, they can use elections to change parties in the future and become a party that embraces the West again. If it really doesn't work, you can also give him a color revolution, so that the internal leading party should cooperate with the outside. This is a historic opportunity that only existed in 200 years. If it is enlarged to 500 years, it is also possible. This is a historic strategic rebalancing strategy between the East and the West. The US currency hegemony, democracy, freedom, and human rights are gone, and it is said that the US has no losses. The US lost the most in this war, none of them. China's life is better, and the opportunity is right in front of us. The Russo-Ukrainian War is the best historical and strategic opportunity to change China's destiny. This depends on the depth and breadth of its involvement. If the United States does not work hard, it will lose the whole of Europe. At present, the largest investment is the United States, followed by the European Union. If we simply regard him as a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, this is an absolutely wrong view. Ukraine is just a war pawn of the NATO bloc. Ukraine is too small, and it would have collapsed without the support of the NATO group. The United States is far more floating than Russia. Otherwise, it will not fight against Russia with the US currency hegemony, democracy, freedom, and human rights. The loss of the United States is much greater than that of Russia. We need to use Russia's war resources and potential to maximize the consumption of the entire NATO bloc. Let Russia and NATO consume each other, and China will reap the benefits of the fishermen. When both sides are that is when China really rises. It is a matter of trade-off strategy. This is China's core interest, the best interest. What China has to do is to maintain the strategic balance between the warring parties as much as possible. The two sides will fall into a long-term war of attrition and a protracted war. I don't know if Beijing's decision-making elites, accustomed to pacifism, really realize this. Generally speaking, it is impossible for Western countries to have more casualties than the volunteers in the entire war. The Korean army is giving away heads, which basically equalizes the casualty ratio between the volunteers and the United Nations. Condition. For example, in the Battle of Shanganling, the casualties of the US Army were nearly double that of the volunteers. But it is impossible for NATO to win this proxy war against Russia. This is a basic judgment of mine. In fact, it has been clearly seen from the wars in Afghanistan and Syria. In particular, the war in Afghanistan is very representative. NATO equipment and NATO-trained troops collapsed overnight. The Taliban is only a guerrilla-level military organization. The so-called peace of Western countries is a hypocrite. Of course, the current situation in China is that of the landlords in praying for rain. Regardless of peace or war, China is one of the biggest beneficiaries. Because of the trade in peacetime, they are not as profitable as China. So China doesn't care about the Russia-Ukraine war and the war with China at all. The Russian army made many mistakes during the Russo-Ukraine war, some even strategic mistakes. It is mainly manifested in the first stage of thinking of underestimating the enemy, lack of national mobilization, lack of ideological preparation for the depth and breadth of NATO's involvement, lack of ideological preparation for the depth and intensity of Western sanctions, lack of judgment on the cruelty of war, and lack of tenacious resistance to the Ukrainian army. Mental preparation. Judging from the combat effectiveness of the Wagner Group and the regular Russian army, there are also many problems within the Russian army. In the Korean War, the casualty ratio of the volunteers to the US Army was 3:1, and the casualty ratio to the entire United Nations Army was only 1.1 to 1. because the troops from South Korea and other countries in the United Nations Army basically came to send heads. But in Bakhmut, the casualty ratio of the Ukrainian army to the Russian army was at least 7-1. NATO publicly stated that it was 7-1, and some Western institutions and senior Ukrainian officials believed it was 10-1. A large number of troops and equipment of the Ukrainian army were wasted and damaged in Bakhmut, and the casualties were extremely high, more than twice the casualty ratio of the Korean War volunteers to the US military. Recently, the G7 has openly kidnapped China politically and openly asked China to put pressure on Russia to negotiate in accordance with the logic of Ukraine and NATO. This is openly provoking Sino-Russian relations. China does not have such political influence on Russia, and even if it did, it would not be able to do so. This is a war between NATO and Russia. What does it have to do with China? Now 6 African countries have been introduced to act as mediators. I think it's quite funny. When will it be the African black brothers' turn to talk about major events in this world? Bakhmut was of no value in February because all the places supported by the Bakhmut hub traffic lines were lost. Only one 8 salient remained, and at that time Bakhmut was mostly captured and Russian occupation with the favorable terrain around. The meat grinder operation against the Ukrainian army has already begun. Therefore, NATO suggested that the driver withdraw Bakhmut's troops, abandon Bakhmut, and concentrate his forces to launch a counterattack in the direction of Zaporozhye. Driver, this political amateur can't understand. He is stubborn. He stuffs a large number of troops and equipment into it, right in the arms of the Russian army. It seems that Bakhmut has a taste of Wuhan, China. Perhaps it is also the strategic position of Suzhou, so the international media is particularly concerned. Why openly lie? Because the attention of international public opinion on this battle is too high. It is the cruelest battle since the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and it is called a meat grinder. On the one hand, the defeat of the Ukrainian army is the morale of the people and the military of Ukraine, and on the other hand, it is related to the face of NATO. It is also related to the political support of voters in NATO countries for military aid to Ukraine. Therefore, the Ukrainian military and NATO media must lie openly, otherwise the game will be difficult to continue. Biden advocated in Japan to provide fighters for the Ukrainian army. The meaning is obvious: continue to increase the chips of the game. The NATO group has temporarily fallen into a politically difficult situation, because this is a proxy war between the entire NATO group and Russia, and they really cannot afford to lose such a war. NATO is the clearest about whether Bakhmut is lost. NATO clearly stated that the city of Bakhmut has been lost, and the fighting in the Bakhmut area is still going on. Who is lying about the Russian army's capture of Bakhmut? Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Russian media are saying that the Russian army has conquered Bakhmut. This means that the Russian army has fully occupied Bakhmut. The Ukrainian army was defeated in this cruelest battle. It is said that the Ukrainian army was in Bakh. 19 brigades of about 200,000 troops were successively invested in the Mutar battlefield. And they are all the main forces, and the NATO troops also have key defenses here. Zelensky admitted to the media that the Ukrainian army had lost Bakhmut. Now the deputy commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army has denied the claims of Russia and Zelensky, saying that the Ukrainian army still partially controls Bakhmut and has formed a semi-encirclement situation against the Russian army. So who is lying? Undoubtedly the Ukrainians. Frontline war reporters are very aware of the situation on the battlefield. It's purely for data comparison. Don't make any unnecessary associations. All the information comes from the internet that can be seen inside the wall. Area comparison. Use the equal area projection map, under the same scale, directly put the two together. Old map with Crimea in it. The area data comes from Baidu Encyclopedia. I don't know why the area of Ukraine given by Baidu is larger than that given by foreign English websites, and I didn't check whether the area includes the Crimea Peninsula, but overall the difference is not too much, without affecting the comparison. The area of Ukraine is 16.76 times that of Taiwan. By the way, the area of the Crimea Peninsula is about 26,000 square kilometers, which is 10,000 square kilometers smaller than Taiwan. It is said that Russia only dispatched 200 people to take Crimea. 2021, population comparison. Taiwan, 23.375 million. Ukraine, 43.923 million. Taiwan's population is about half that of Ukraine's. U.S. military base comparison. I have indicated the location of Ukraine with yellow arrows and red circles. Blue areas are NATO, Dark dots are US military bases. Really, the map is probably from Russia. From the perspective of motivation, there is no need for Deng Mao to conceal or lie about the US military base, because it is related to his own deployment of troops. Moreover, if Deng Mao's label is wrong, it is very likely to give the American media an excuse to say that Deng Mao is a fake. Counting the US military bases in Alaska and New Zealand, the situation on the Asia-Pacific side is shown in the picture above. I won't count the exact number, but the biggest difference is that there is NATO and its headquarters. Here, at least the US troops stationed in South Korea dare not move around, because Sanfati is in the north, and South Korea's military power is empty, so it is difficult to guarantee that North Korea has no ideas. Moreover, now Sanpeng's balls are getting stronger and stronger. Terrain comparison. The side of Ukraine near Russia is more plains, and the west side is mountainous. The side of Taiwan close to the motherland is a shallow sea and a plain, and there are more cities, population, and various infrastructures on this side. The central and eastern parts of Taiwan, the Pacific side, are more mountainous. Imagine, when is landing, is it better to be a plane after landing, or is it better to have mountains on the shore and the other side is condescending? Airport comparison. Attached is a comparison of the strengths of Russia and Ukraine before the start of the war. Note that before the start of the war, after the start of the war, only the upper villains are left on the Ukrainian side, and the lower ones have been dealt with.